Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Brand Contributor webinar, Mobile in an Omnichannel World. Before we get started, though, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping points so you know how to participate in today's event. The webinar will last for approximately 1 hour. All attendees are on mute, so the only voices you should hear throughout the webinar will be mine and the presenters. You'll have the opportunity to put forward text questions to today's presenter by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll collect these and address as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I'd now like to introduce Michael Trapani. Michael manages product marketing for IBM Marketing Cloud. He is a mobile engagement expert and design enthusiast and has experience leading marketing and sales efforts in both startups and the enterprise, including time at IBM and Apple. And today he'll be exploring use cases that will help marketers understand where mobile fits in customer experience, what strategies can be used to increase engagement, and what the evolution of the mobile landscape can tell us about where it is going. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Michael.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm very excited to be part of this webinar today and looking forward to answering any questions and hopefully sharing some valuable advice for the audience. Start with a little introduction. As we mentioned, my name is Michael Trapani. I'm a product marketing manager for IBM Marketing Cloud. I have a decent history within the mobile industry, and I've been working in various companies in that space for quite a while. As we mentioned, I started my career at Apple. I was there for about 4 years, and I left Apple to join a mobile startup in New York. And from there, the startup for mobile engagement was acquired by IBM, and so here I am at IBM. It's been about 2.5 years since I've been at IBM. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce you to some of the content. Here's what I have planned. Pretty unintimidating agenda. We're going to talk about some of the changes that I've noticed recently in the mobile space, how things have changed since I remember joining mobile and the industry, and how things are different now than they used to be, different eras that mobile has gone through. Then we're going to dive into some mobile use cases that I've seen have been helpful to mobile marketers and mobile teams who are trying to bring mobile experiences into the larger marketing experience as a whole. And then I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions, and we can take it from there. So we'll start off right at the beginning. Mobile engagement is very different now. It's different from when I first joined Apple. That was back in 2008, so we're talking iPhone 3G. The App Store had just launched. If you had asked me what mobile was back then, I would say, well, it's all about apps. And things have changed over time, and I think we'll get into some of those. But specifically, we've noticed mobile has changed in 3 distinct ways as of late. First, what mobile is different. How people are calling mobile and what they're saying that it does and what it's used for. That's the second piece, how mobile is used. And we'll talk about that as well. And then a general marketing shift that is affecting all mobile channels. I'm sorry, all channels, but mobile is no exception. So we're going to talk about all of those individually. So here's the first piece. The first major change is that we're learning that mobile is more than just a unique execution channel. Mobile does have unique execution channels, and we'll talk about those in length. But if we talk about push for apps and SMS, those are really just a piece of what mobile really is. What it really is essentially the entire mobile experience. It's the whole thing. It's everything from a mobile website to, of course, a mobile app and mobile engagement, but also mobile ads and social ads, and essentially anything that a customer can do from a mobile device. And those are beyond both phones and tablets, but they're moving on to things like wearables and messaging apps, and we'll talk about those as well. So the concept of mobile is broadening. And we're noticing that to be a very interesting trend. And what used to be a way to reach your customers in a very personal way, while it maintains that capability, we're noticing some different definitions of mobile. Which leads us to the next piece, which is mobile is being used primarily to understand who their customers are. marketers do have a great way to engage with customers through mobile. But we're noticing that mobile's true value is to inform a larger context of the customer. Because of the unique capabilities and analytics we can gain from mobile, we can understand things like location and SMS response rates, how people function on mobile versus how they function on desktop. We can learn that about a customer, and marketers are using the mobile channel to build a much more informed profile, a universal profile of their customers. And that's happening on multiple channels. So we're able to create marketing use cases on the user level and not just the channel level. And that kind of leads us to the final change that we've noticed, which is mobile campaigns and campaigns as a whole are making way for multi-campaign customer journeys. So what's a customer journey, right? It's something that I'm sure us marketers are hearing a lot. If we think about campaigns, if we think about a mobile campaign or an email campaign, pretty simple to understand, right? You create a message, or you create maybe a string of messages that are delivered at different times or maybe under certain conditions. Well, that's great, but the challenge is when we're trying to manage a customer experience with all of the channels that are available for customers today, it's very difficult to get a full picture of the customer experience from the campaign level alone. So what we have to do is zoom out and get a full picture of the customer experience, which might consist of dozens of campaigns that take place over many years even. All the way from when the customer first hears about your brand or your product from maybe a friend or a social post, all the way through to where they're comparing your product to a competitor, to where they're buying your product or trying it out, to when they're using your product, all the way through to when they become a promoter of your product within their own social networks and friends. So we're noticing the way to take advantage of that is by building these customer journeys and thinking about our strategy from the journey level rather than the campaign level. And so let's talk about some of the eras that mobile went through. When the mobile app store first came out, obviously a huge time in mobile, very exciting. We developed these descriptive use cases, what I call descriptive use cases. And in 2009, some technologies within apps allowed us to take advantage of some of those interesting capabilities that these devices had, things like location, sending a message based on the customer's location. If I was flying, say, from New York across the United States to San Francisco, for example, and I was a rental car company, I might send a message that said, when a customer arrives in San Francisco, saying, "Hello, welcome to San Francisco. We can offer you an offer on an upgrade to upgrade your vehicle today." So at the time, that was a really cool use case, and it's still kind of cool today. But I think that a lot has changed over time, and we'll talk about some of those changes. But you know, that was a big deal to be able to send location-based messages. But what we're doing is we're describing the use case in advance. We're setting that up. We're defining what the experience will be for the customer, for any customer that lands in San Francisco coming from New York. Later, we allowed to combine data sets. So we didn't just have data of the customer's location, but we can also combine that with things like weather data. So let's say we had that same customer who was flying in from New York to San Francisco, and we also combine that example with weather data, and we say, all right, well, it's going to rain this weekend, so why don't we send out a message that says something like, "Welcome to San Francisco. Looks like it's going to rain this weekend. We recommend upgrading to a four-wheel drive vehicle." So, you know, with this example, through this era, I was able to combine these data sets and allow more value to a customer so that I can actually send this customer a message that would be more valuable to them, more relevant to their particular weekend, because not only am I offering you an upgrade, which might be more money for me, but I'm giving you a reason to do it, which is valuable to the customer. Finally, we're entering, and we're in the very new stages here of what I like to call a cognitive era of engagement, where we can do quite a bit with not just data that we have, but unstructured data that we don't have. We can take advantage of things like sentiment building and understanding how customers are, how they feel when they're sending messages or what they want based on social posts. And so we can get some really interesting trends from data that we're observing. The example here that I'm giving is, let's say we notice that that same customer who's coming from New York to San Francisco, flying across the country, maybe going to some better weather that's in San Francisco versus it's in New York, and I'm a New Yorker, I can say that New Yorkers love to complain about the weather. So when they come to San Francisco, we notice that in this rental car company, they always tend to upgrade to a convertible. Interesting. Maybe they really want that nice weather, they want to experience the nice weather that they're going to get in San Francisco. However, we also notice, based on the data that we're receiving, that folks who come from Miami and Florida, where the weather is also very nice, don't upgrade. So interesting. So maybe what we can do is offer separate offers. Customers coming from New York, maybe they get a lesser discount because we know they're going to upgrade anyway. And we offer a separate offer to the folks coming from Miami who may not upgrade. So we give them a larger discount so that they'd be enticed to upgrade. And so we can do some interesting things, and we can do those in real time now as we move into this new era. We can take that even further by understanding social sentiment. Maybe we can see on an individual level what customers are posting on their social feeds. Maybe a customer who's coming from New York or coming from anywhere posted a picture of them kayaking on a previous trip to San Francisco, and they said, "Can't wait to go back to San Francisco, really excited to go kayaking again." And so our message to that customer might be, "Welcome to San Francisco. We've already mounted a sports kit on your car so that you can mount a kayak for your kayaking trip. Welcome to San Francisco," right? Now that's a really valuable, highly targeted, highly relevant type of message that we're starting to see use cases for, and the technology already exists to do things like this today. We're not limited by the technology anymore for these types of use cases. We're limited only by our imaginations and how our creativity for these things. So it's a very interesting time that we're entering in now. So let's talk about some mobile use cases. Let's talk about how we can get started, some quick tips that we can use for encouraging mobile to be included into a larger customer experience. First things first, as we said right in the beginning, we have to think about the customer journey, and we have to figure out where mobile fits into that customer journey. Let's look at the different mobile channels. We'll take these two, for example, SMS and app messages. SMS is a great channel, extremely popular all around the world. There's really not a country that doesn't use SMS. Interestingly enough, the United States seems to be focused on the app side, but there's still a strong use of SMS. But one of the things we noticed, the SMS, of course, has a very broad reach. It's anybody with a phone number. You don't need a smartphone to get an SMS message. You don't need an app store or an app downloaded on your phone. You can just sign up with your phone number, you can opt in to receive those messages, and you can start your SMS. So you have a great way to send those simple one- or two-way communication. It's also great for promoting other channels. It's a way to get people to try out other things. And then because it's so easy to join and it doesn't have a high barrier of entry, it can be used very early in the customer journey. If you want to build a list of prospects, it's a great way to start doing that. App messaging is a little bit different. It's interesting that app messages are, because there is a little bit higher of a barrier of entry, a couple of things comes with that. First, you're talking to your most loyal customers. That's a very important point. Somebody who actually takes the time to download your app, installs it on their phone, even if your app is free, the commodity in their world is storage space on their phone, right? There's no way that your app, for the most part, is going to be more important than a video of somebody's kids, right? They're probably going to want to make sure that they have space for that, and your app, and frankly, most apps are going to take a backseat to that. So if somebody does take the time to download your app and consume the space on their device, it's important to understand that they're a loyal customer. They want to receive messages from you. They want specific use cases from you. The other thing that's interesting is you have a little bit more advanced targeting that you can do on mobile apps, not just because you can do more within an app than you can in an SMS message. You can get some interesting analytics and behaviors from an app, and we'll talk about those. But what's interesting is things are actionable, and targeting you can actually do for a less cost. You could do things like target with location. That is honestly not done that much with SMS anymore because of how expensive it is. So targeting through mobile apps usually does not cost anything more than it does to send messages. So it's important to think about it in that way. You have a little bit more advanced targeting. You can send a little bit more of maybe targeted messages based on what's going on the device because you are installed on the customer's device through the app. So if we want to expand your reach, a great way to do that and offer customers alternatives is by reaching them across channels. And not just doing the same message across channels, right? You don't want to blast the customer on every single channel that they're on. You want to make sure that there's a reason why you're messaging them on multiple channels. And so I have this example here of a trading app. So this is for trading stocks on your phone, similar to E-Trade or the other stock trading companies. So their primary business is executing trades on their mobile app. And so for them to do that, they need to make sure that their transactions go through. And sometimes it's not always the fault of the trading app that a transaction is not going through. I use this example. If a customer makes a trade on the TD Ameritrade app and that transaction could not process, maybe because there were not enough funds in the account or there was some kind of issue with their account that could not happen, obviously TD Ameritrade wants to make sure that their customers know and they are informed so that they can address the issue. Well, what do they do first? First thing they do is they reach them in the channel that they executed the trade in. So if that was a desktop, they'll send them an email. If that was through the mobile app, then they'll send them a mobile app push. And the reason they use that first is because a customer can take action very easily through those two channels. So if I'm on the app, I can receive a message like this on my phone right there on the lock screen that you see on the left. I can swipe to open that message, and it can deep link me directly to the page where I can take the action, fix the problem, and move on with my day. Now, if I don't answer that message, we're getting into obviously a little bit more important, right? This could be a timely trade for the stock. And so if I don't answer that message, I can send them a message in which they would be even more likely to respond, which would be the SMS message. Even though it's a little bit harder to take action, I would have to do it through a mobile website. I'd probably have to log in. But again, what's most important is that the customer knows that something has happened and they need to be informed. And so I send them an SMS message as kind of a backup to that first message that I send. So being able to combine those channels and understand so that those channels are talking to each other is a really important piece of your mobile engagement strategy. Here's a nice and simple use case. Use bigger channels to promote your smaller ones, right? We talked about apps and SMS and how SMS tends to have more of a user base. Well, apps are still useful. Of course, there are many use cases where apps are very important and you need an app. And so a customer, a marketer might create a business case to build an app. They'll have the app built. They'll spend a ton of money on building this app. Maybe they'll do it in-house. Maybe they'll use a third-party vendor. They build the app. They launch the app, and they only have 60 downloads in the first day. And everybody starts to panic. Everybody's worried that they've invested all this money. Don't worry. A nice and easy way to drive customers to smaller channels or emerging channels is by using the channels that you already have. So send a message to a customer that is already subscribed to SMS. to show them that you have a mobile app. You can offer them a deep link so that it links right to the App Store, so that it's a very easy process, and you'd be surprised just how many customers will go ahead and download the app just because they received it in a channel. And it's important not to use a half measure here. There should be a strategy to promote your newer channels, whether it's an Apple Watch app or a Google Glass app or anything that is new that's coming out, right? If you start to build out a Facebook bot that are coming out, you should have a full-fledged campaign on a channel that customers are already in to promote that channel, because there's really no good way to test it at a scalable level if you're not actually dedicating resources to promoting it. So, things like that, in-store signage, really important. Here's another use case, and it's revolving around automation, using the technology to benefit your customers' time and also the time of your employees. So let's say you have a call center, and one of the big things, and I think today still the biggest thing that the call centers need to worry about is hold wait time, right? If somebody's waiting on hold for a very long time, we all have been there. It's probably the worst experience anybody could ever have. Takes up people's time, very frustrating. And so what a lot of companies are doing is when a customer calls in, they're sending an automated response that says, hey, you know that we can call you back at a certain time. But why even take that step? If you can have an automated process that has a customer call back at a certain time, why not automatically trigger a message to be sent out once an order has been approved, and so that once that happens, a message can take place so that a customer can receive the message and then right within the app set an appointment so that they can actually get the call when they want to on their own time. So it's a great way to automate the process and cut down wait time on not just your customer's time, but also your own wait time. All right, so for those on the call who know the brand Chipotle, they're a very popular, especially in the United States, very popular Mexican food restaurant, kind of like a fast food restaurant here in different parts of the world, but also very popular in the U.S. They performed, in my opinion, one of the best SMS campaigns in the history of SMS campaigns, and I'll tell you a little bit about how it worked. So if you're an avid burrito eater and you like to eat them for lunch, there was a particular time in Chipotle's history where they wanted to make sure that their customers knew that they were training their employees on making sure the food was clean and how to serve the food so that it's very clean, because there were some concerns that they were not doing that. And so what they did was they closed all of their stores at noon on one day, every single store across the country, and they closed for 3 hours. So prime lunchtime, right? This is the height of their business. And if you walked up to a Chipotle, like I did on that day, you saw this sign, which was standing right outside of their door and said, "Be right back. We're closed for lunch today to attend a meeting with all other Chipotle employees, but don't worry, we'll be back open at 3 a.m. I also wrote here on the bottom, if we messed up your lunch plans, let us make it up to you. Visit chipotle.com/raincheck. See you soon." Interesting, right? Okay, I'll bite. I'm on my mobile device. They know that their customers are seeing this while they're outside, so they made a nice, easy URL for customers to visit. So if you pulled out your phone, you went to chipotle.com/raincheck, and you saw all the way on the left, you saw that post where it says, "You're in luck, text raincheck to 888-222. And you'll get a free burrito." Wow, that's huge value exchange, right? So they're sending a message that says, we're going to give you our primary product. That's like walking into like an Apple store and saying, hey, sorry, we're closed, here's a free iPhone, right? Big, big value exchange. Okay, wow, cool. All right, so I'll open my messaging app and I'll type in 888-222 and I'll send the word rain check. So I sent that word rain check and I got this reply instantly back that says, hey, you're almost there. Click here for your free burrito. And so you tapped on that URL and it opened up into this form. You filled out the form, you pressed submit, and you got your free burrito about a day later. Really, really great. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. The key here was capitalizing on the marketing opportunity that was this closure of stores, in which Chipotle probably lost a lot of money, but they used that as an opportunity to build a tremendous amount. I mean, thousands and thousands of people. There was a ton of social presence for this. Everybody was tweeting and posting on Facebook that everyone was going to get a free burrito. They totally forgot about the fact that they were closing their stores because Chipotle was concerned about the cleanliness of their food. So what happened instead was everybody just got excited to get a free burrito, and they built their SMS list to a much higher point as what it was. But they did that because they had a true value exchange. They gave away their most valuable asset to every single customer who wanted to take this plunge, to fill out this form and sign up for SMS messages. So you're adding value to that channel because now every customer that signed up for this promotion got something valuable in return for doing it. So they'll always think about their SMS interactions with Chipotle as something that is valuable to them. So really, really great example of how you can do and drive opt-ins through SMS. Now, I will point out that not everybody had a happy day on this day. Unfortunately, there was a man who had the unfortunate phone number of 888-2222, and so he got about 600 messages from people who typed in the wrong phone number, all telling him rain check and that they wanted a free burrito. So this is an actual screenshot from the guy's phone. And there was some news report of it, but it's really, so make sure whenever you're sending these that your short codes are well protected. All right, so moving on, using mobile social display in the right points to entice customers. All of these channels, as we mentioned, it's important for them to be able to work together, and because we have to understand where customers are in their journey stage. Are they, just learning about your brand? Do they know about it already? I don't need to see an ad about a product that I've just purchased, right? So making sure that those channels are talking to each other are important. But again, using that social message or the display message are great for customer acquisitions. Using social lookalike models that Facebook and Twitter provide for marketers are really great, right? If you have some customers in a database that you want to get similar customers for, you can set up a lookalike model, and Facebook will give you, X number of customers who are similar to the customers that you've shared. And it's a great way for new customer acquisition or retargeting when a customer is in the early stages. But then use things like push and SMS for ongoing kind of customer experience engagement. It's really important to think, a lot of money is poured into acquisition, but it turns out, as we all know as marketers, that it's much less expensive to maintain customers that you have to maintain that growth than it is to acquire new ones. And so make sure that you don't focus or maybe even consider shifting some of the budget that you have for acquisition on retention. Building a really great experience, because you're not going to get a truly loyal customer through acquisition. You might get a great experience for a customer. They might like your brand, but loyalty is built over time, as we all know. So it's important to remember that you're going to build loyalty through retention, and that is worth a good amount of budget to make sure that you can do. So think about those retention campaigns and how you can do that in the latter part of the customer journey. Here's a great example I always like to use. So here we have Wimbledon, right? Everyone's very excited for Wimbledon. This is a great way sometimes to understand that when we're using these engagement campaigns, we're not always trying to sell something. We're not always looking for a way to give an offer or a discount or a way to drive more purchases. Sometimes we just want to make the customer's experience great, because that will return a customer and get them to spend more money. So if we use the example here at Wimbledon, James bought tickets to Wimbledon. He set up his schedule through the app. He knows what events he's going to go to, so he's really excited to go. The night before, he receives a message through his email, and it has his itinerary there. It has his diary, what he's going to, the matches he's going to go to, and where they're located on which courts. So he's really excited, and he sees this message, and he's getting ready to go. When he arrives by car to the grounds, he gets a location-based message on the day of the event. And that message is, welcome to Wimbledon. You're seated in this particular section. You can get to your seats very quickly by going through this particular place. So again, we're just, at this time, we're not trying to tell them about the merchandise that he can get. I mean, we can do that too if we want. But in order for a customer to actually take these channels seriously, they need to see true value in ways that don't always cost them money. So sometimes we're just making their day better. Oh, here's the quickest way to get to my seats. What customer who's arriving, what attendee who's arriving at Wimbledon doesn't want to know the fastest way they can get to their seats without, all the crowds that are out there, right? They want to get there, they want to sit down, maybe settle in first. And then you can send them offers for maybe upgrades or merchandise or concessions that they can purchase within the event itself. So again, we're just kind of making their day better, and that's a great way to build value out of the channels. One of the things that I hope you're seeing here is that mobile is about conversations. If we're talking about the channels of SMS and push and app messaging, the mobile device is so personal that if we are engaging with customers, we need to talk to them in a way that they're familiar with. What are the types of SMS messages that you receive today? What does an iMessage look like to you? What does a WhatsApp message look like to you? Well, it's usually somebody that you know. It's usually somebody that you get a message, and they'll use diction that you are familiar with. The types of conversations that they'll have with you, they'll speak to you in a way of somebody that you know, like a friend or a family member. And so it's okay to use that messaging to talk to your customers. There are a lot of great brands, a lot of retailers that use that type of language that they choose to talk to their customers in that way, because it's about the conversation. It's not necessarily about, you're not going to talk to them in the same way you might write ad copy. You're not sending a message to a billboard, you're sending a message to a device in their pocket, or maybe even something that they're wearing on their wrist. So it's really important to be personal, and that is done through either personalization through technology or through marketing acumen by selecting the right word choice that makes it more casual and conversational. So we talked about the empowered consumer, right? We talked about ways that the consumer is kind of changing how mobile is being done or how marketing is being done. And so we need the empowered marketer. So we have to learn about some of the challenges that are facing marketing or facing established digital marketing today. Because we've talked a lot about two specific channels today, SMS and app notifications. But there's a very good chance that within the next couple of years, everything that I've said and any webinar that you've seen within the last year can be upended by disruptors. Disruptors not just within industries like yours, but disruptors within the technology space that change the way that you engage with your customers. And in many cases, disruptors affect the incumbents who were positioned to win, right? There's no way that Airbnb was in a better position to compete against Hilton, who is all over the world, but it turns out that there was a need that was not being met by Hilton or Marriott or Starwood. So because they didn't embrace technology, like taxi companies who did not embrace technology, and now that Uber came out and Lyft are out there taking their money away, you see them starting to adapt, but it may be a little too late for a lot of those companies because they didn't embrace the technology fast enough. So what I'm saying is, while these disruptors happen and we can watch from afar as hospitality brands or maybe as transportation companies are noticing these right within their industry, but it's important to remember that every day there's a new technology that comes out, a new way to fill gaps that are not being met by the industry standards of the business, and it could be coming to yours as well. So understanding the new trends and thinking about how they can apply to your business is a really important way to understand how you can actually compete. So what I always recommend is, with every new technology trend, I recommend following all of the tech blogs, or even one or two of them that are relatively unbiased, so that you can get a full picture, is that, think about new use cases, see what other companies are doing, understand the demand and the return that you can get by using this technology, and test with it. Test with a small budget even. It's worth testing with a small budget rather than doing nothing and thinking that it's not going to affect your business, because I guarantee there will be a technology that will affect your business in some way, and it's dollars that, and it's money that you can be saving. So let's look at what some of those disrupting technologies can be. First things first, messaging apps. They've been around for a little while, right? It's not terribly new, but what we're seeing now is that messaging apps are being used as engagement points for businesses. So there's a way that you can follow messaging apps, follow businesses on messaging apps. If you look at WeChat in China, it's almost becoming a very really strong social network within China. Obviously, it's extremely popular in China, but it's becoming much more than just a messaging app. It's becoming kind of a central social network within for customers to use. So think about messaging apps. Think about how you can use them to message your customers. Some of them have been opened up to businesses like WeChat and Line. WhatsApp, Facebook, not there yet as far as ways to message businesses. However, Facebook Messenger has just opened up something to bots, which I'll talk about in just a second. The next piece is artificial intelligence, AI, right? We're hearing a lot about it more. IBM has technologies like Watson, but of course there are many other AI technologies out there like Siri and by Apple and Alexa by Amazon. So think about how AI can apply. There's a great way that you could use AI today within the Amazon Echo. It's essentially like building a small-scale app. I think Amazon refers to them as skills that you can give Alexa, so that you can say, hey Alexa, order me some more eggs, and that can go into their Amazon account. But you can apply it to your business as well, like when is it going to rain today? And maybe it's using a separate weather app that is a little bit more advanced than the standard weather app that comes with it, or book me a hotel, and a transportation a travel company might use that to use AI. So think about AI, think about how it might apply to your business. We are still in relatively early stages of it, but something tells me it will ramp up very quickly. So think about this, think about how you can use it. Now we'll talk about bots. Bots is essentially a messaging app plus a artificial intelligence combined. So what it is it's using the messaging app as the interface to communicate with the artificial intelligence, so that a company like Hyatt, who has a hotel chain, it's a great way to communicate. So it's using that AI, and businesses are now allowed to create bots within Messenger, and use Messenger as the way for the customers to communicate with businesses. So this is a really exciting technology that's coming out, that's out today, and a lot of companies are embracing it now. So think about this too. Wearables, still very early here. I know the Apple Watch made the big splash when it came out. Some people love it, some people don't love it. In my opinion, if we go back in time, and maybe I'm a little biased, but if we go back in time to when the iPhone first came out, when the iPod first came out, and we think about how they were received, the first generation, I could not use a first generation iPhone today. and yet I use a first-generation Apple Watch. And so, what does that tell me about where the Apple Watch and competing technologies like Android Wear watches, Samsung watches, and Fitbit watches, where does that tell me about where they're going to be in the next year, in the next 2 years? If we look at 2007, where mobile phones, where smartphones were at that time compared to where they are today, we're looking at different worlds. So I would not, by any stretch of the imagination, count wearables out. I think they're only getting started, and thinking about these wearable use cases is very important, very exciting. And finally, virtual reality. I love this image. This was during the demo of the Oculus Rift at a Facebook event, I think during F8. And this was a demo that everybody in the audience got an Oculus Rift and they were able to use it. I think this tells us a lot about our future. This tells us a lot about how immersive it is, and if anybody who's out there even used in a Samsung Gear or one of the more entry-level virtual reality headsets, you can instantly see the appeal. As soon as you put it on, as soon as you launch one of these apps, you can instantly see the potential of this. So it's very exciting that we're getting there. And what we're thinking about, again, is this perfect experience, right? So if there's anything that you can take from this, you want to create individual, personalized experiences, and you want to be able to do it at scale. You want to connect with those customers, and you want to make sure that you can do it hundreds, thousands, millions, even billions of times a day, because those are the types of experiences that are going to make a difference, and that will allow your brand to stand out by experience and differentiate yourself in the market. And with that, we'll open it up to some questions. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Michael. As you said, we're now going to begin answering some of the questions that have been submitted during today's presentation. Just as a reminder, you can still submit your questions via the questions pane in your attendee control panel. But our first question is, in using multiple channels to understand and engage with customers, what are your recommendations to avoid actually annoying the customer if you're sending out these multiple messages?
That's a really good question. It's one of the questions we get. It's one of the first questions we always get, so I'm glad it came up first. I agree. I think most messaging, as we see it today, is very annoying. The analogy I like to use is everybody says they hate pop-up ads, right? And I think everybody can agree that they hate pop-up ads. But if every pop-up ad you saw was 99% off your favorite clothing item, you would love pop-up ads. So the key here is two-pronged. It's value, right? That 99%, obviously you're not going to give that, but adding value, so giving value in the message, but also relevance, making sure that message is relevant, right? Knowing when a customer wants to buy that particular item. So, and maybe the message you're sending is not always a marketing message. Maybe it's a service alert. You're providing value to the customer's day, not necessarily by selling them anything, but by giving them a message that they need to know. So making sure that your messages include both service messages and marketing messages, but both of them should have both value and relevance, regardless of the channel that you're using. A second way is making sure that your channels are talking to each other. Your email should know what your SMS is doing. Your SMS should know what your push is doing, and your push should know what your social messages are doing. All of them should be talking to each other. So if you're building something in-house or you're looking for a third-party vendor, make sure that there ways at least to communicate with channels so that they're doing that well, because that's a huge part of it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. Our next question is, do you think mobile marketing is restricted by certain age demographics? How can marketers tackle these older demographics and encourage them to engage and interact with brands?
Good question. I'd say that some mobile devices are restricted by age. I think mobile phones, maybe wearables are restricted a little bit more by age. However, I would say iPads and tablets do have a really great user base through all demographics of age. So I would think if you're building out use cases for, if you're trying to reach an older demographic, think about an iPad app. Think about an iPad or a tablet mobile website, or communicating through Facebook. I think social channels have now reached the point where they're engaging with all sorts of demographics. I have a grandfather in his 90s, and he's on Facebook pretty regularly. He may not know how to use it really well, but he's definitely using it. So think about social engagement, social bots, and also things like tablet experiences, because those are getting a good demographic across ages.
Thank you. Our next question asks, how do we collect the keywording to start building the message and address to clients through mobile or apps?
I would use tools like social listening tools to start. Also things like search engine optimization tools for keywords. That's a really good way to understand what people are talking about, and how customers are actually, what terms they're using, what keywords they're using. I also think, apart from keywords, as AI advances itself, I think you're going to see more ways to understand customers a little bit more naturally than just keywords alone. So stay tuned for that. I think within the next year or so, we're going to see some really interesting search concepts coming out of some other companies that are using artificial intelligence to understand what customers mean when they're searching for something, and there will be some new ways to communicate with customers that way too. In the meantime, check out search engine optimization tools and social listening tools to get a good understanding of how people are wording. But to add to that, think about your customer. I'm sure most marketers out there have a profile of their customers who is, they can define who their customer is generally. They can build a cohort or customer profile. When you build that, think about their day. Think about how they interact with your brand. For example, Sephora, a cosmetics brand, a cosmetics retailer, they're one of our clients, and they think about, okay, well, what do customers do? What do our customers do when they're shopping at Sephora? Who do they shop with? Who would be talking to them about Sephora? Well, it turns out they learned that it's typically their friends. They're shopping with their friends. Our customer tends to shop with her friends. And so if I want to send them a message about Sephora from Sephora, I'm going to talk to them like a friend. I'm going to use that cadence, and I'm going to say, hey, what's up? I'm going to say things like, hey, how are you? How's your day going? I'm going to say things like, I got you covered. I can send you this offer. Very personal. So learning how your customer is, and that's something that I think every marketer can do without having to dive deep into technology in order to do it. So think about the cadence, build a personal brand for the brand itself, and how they message customers.
Thank you, Michael. Our next question asks, you mentioned disruptive forces. How do these affect an organization, especially in relation to the fulfillment of customer expectations and needs?
I think no matter what, the customer's expectations will always go up. We are well past the stage. The customer's being delivered so many things. I mean, if you think about what we can do is, I can, with my mobile device alone, I can go to any city in basically any country and have a hotel, an Airbnb, and a way to get there. I can book my flight from my phone. I can book the Uber to the airport. I can get, once I get to the airport, I can, upgrade to Wi-Fi so that I can get it on my flight. When I land, I can get an Uber to where I'm going, and I can book my hotel on the way to that hotel. So the expectations of customers now are ever increasing. And I'd say that from a brand perspective, because things are so good for the customer now, you will always be perceived as one voice. Even if you have a mobile team and an email team and a fulfillment team, no matter what, you will be one voice. And so that's why, I think communicating and making sure those channels are communicating with each other is so important. because they'll always be perceived as one voice from the customer. So that is generally a big change that we've seen.
Thank you. Our next question asks, there's been a lot around video recently. How would you build that into your mobile marketing campaign?
Sure. So video is huge, and I think it's important to note that in general, whenever new technology comes out, if it is, and try the experiences out yourself, if you notice that it is easier than the technology that you're using today to message your customers, strongly consider testing within that new medium. So video is now a lot easier to make, and it's something that is much more digestible for customers. Our customers, I think we've learned that the human attention span has now lowered beyond that of a goldfish. So that's an interesting thing that came out. But I would say if you're using mobile strategies, consider rich notifications or rich messages that take place within apps. So a lot of providers, and IBM is one of them, but there are many of them out there. When you're sending out app messages, you can have a feed within, essentially an inbox within your app, and those feeds can contain video, images, so that you can record video and use that to promote. And then if you're using SMS, honestly, I would shy away from MMS, the multimedia messaging, because it's extremely expensive, and frankly, customers don't mind tapping on a link anymore. So I would say that it's a great way to send a message to a customer. Tap on a link, send them to a YouTube video as a way to reach them through video. That's a more cost-effective way to do it.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next question asks, what metrics do you use to measure your customers' engagement or sentiment on a mobile? Are there any tools that you can recommend?
Sure. I mean, obviously, again, I'm a little biased at IBM. We have some great tools that include, cognitive capabilities, so that you can understand some sentiment within customers and how they're behaving, personalized. But of course, there are many other tools out there. I'd say whatever tools that you use, look for things like sentiment, social sentiment, cognitive. Look for capabilities like that and test them. Make sure that they're legitimate, because there are a lot of companies out there who are kind of jumping on the bandwagon of cognitive and AI, but when you dig a little bit deeper, you learn that what they're offering isn't, is a little bit more predictive. It's not as intelligent as they would have you believe. So I'd say dig into whatever it is that you're considering. And then as far as, the types of things you can understand, you can learn about things like location history, responses, time spent within an app once the customer's opened a message. So you can see how engaging your messages are, or how well they convert. And then, what matters the most is, if you're using any one of these vendors, make sure that they allow for their technology to connect with your internal technology. So not just the channels talking to each other, but make sure your mobile app knows and can connect to your POS system, your purchasing system, and your fulfillment system, so that they can, you can make sure that if an item is out of stock, or that if a customer opened up a message and made a purchase, that push notification was what drove to that purchase, and that's a great way to measure conversion. So make sure that any vendor that you use does take into account connections to your own systems through APIs or other technologies.
Thank you. Our next question asks, how do you deal with consumers' increasing concerns around the security and privacy of their data, especially on mobile?
Sure. So this is another question that comes up a lot, especially around location. And one of the things I always say is, there is this myth that customers don't like to share their location. And I'd say for the most part, I don't want to share my location on average with somebody who doesn't tell me why they want it. And maybe that's just because I use mobile a lot, and I've been in the business for a little bit. But if you look at apps that ask customers to share their location. If you open up an app and the first thing you see is, we'd like to use your location. Can you share it with us? No, I'm not going to share my location with you. You haven't even told me why. Then the same thing for push notifications. Hey, we'd like to bother you with push notifications. Will you give us permission to do that? No, I mean, those are terrible experiences. You should be able to tell your customer why. What is, again, like that Chipotle example, what is the value exchange? What am I getting out of sharing this with you? What value am I getting as a customer? And the reason I say it's a miss is because if you look at the example of the Weather Channel app, they have a 98.9% opt-in rate for sharing location, right? Because there is real value in a customer in an app that understands my location if they want to tell me what the weather is. So if you show that value, and you share that with your customers before you ask permission, you're going to get a much higher opt-in rate. And if you can't show that value, don't do it. Don't have the use case. You're just going to bother your customers. You're going to waste their battery life. I don't recommend entering these spaces without having real value, without really showing value for the channel, because it's better for mobile as a whole and better for your business.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. If you have any other questions, please feel free to tweet us at CIM_exchange. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate if you could complete that and provide us with your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within the next couple of days with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of CIM and Michael, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.